my whole thing right now is about being unstoppable, about really reaching inside and grabbing something that's in there that you might not know is there.
Alrighty, welcome to another episode of Todd's Unrequested Opinion, where once again you get my opinion without it being requested. Fancy that, right? Today I want to talk about something that's a little bit different to what I normally chat about on these episodes, but is something that I've got a great deal of experience in and am very passionate about, which is how do I take my big ideas that I want to communicate with people and how do I communicate them in a way that, number one, makes sense to the person I'm trying to influence, teach, or persuade, number two, hits home, and number three, actually promotes action, yeah? And this is important. The worst thing that can happen when you are trying to teach, influence, or persuade someone is that they sit there and they just don't get it. And what's not immediately obvious is that the reason that most people don't get it when you do this, right, is because you've failed to connect the dots for them in their mind. You've failed to take your message, your idea, the thing that you're communicating, and go, here is this thing, and here's how this relates to a big picture, or here is how this relates specifically to you and whatever it is that you want. That is absolutely a critical idea to understand. So let me give you an example, because I want to very quickly teach you how to get this right in this short little video, yeah? So back in 2016-17, I had a really big office space in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane, and we turned that into a little startup hub. So we had hot desks and offices and a big old boardroom, and we had startup founders come in and lease space from us, yeah? Now, one of our anchor tenants is one of Australia's largest startup accelerators, and what they do is they basically get startups that come and see them, and sometimes they invest into the startup, but they also take them under their wing, they train them, they help them get their product right, they help them get their pitch right, they expose them to investors, and they basically help them raise money and bring their product to market. Now, every Friday, what they would do is they would get their startup founders in Brisbane to come into the office, to sit down in the boardroom and pitch their big idea. The outcome was for them to pitch it, get confident, get critiqued, and improve their pitch. Now, one of the main guys that was up here in Brisbane, he asked me one day, because he'd heard some of my pitches and was impressed, and he asked me to sit down in the boardroom and critique the founders, yeah? So to give them some good feedback to get their pitch on point. Now, this is really important to understand, yeah? If you're pitching to raise money, which I've got quite a bit of experience with, the most important thing you can do is to always be setting the overarching frame to the big idea, giving a compelling narrative, and then stacking all the rest of the stuff up so it relates back to that big idea, the big promise, the big frame. The failure to do that means that me, as the person listening, as I'm an investor, I'm sitting there trying to figure out what you're talking about. And that's what would happen, right? I would sit there in the boardroom and I literally knew none of these people. I knew not a thing about what they were about. So basically I was like a brand new investor hearing their pitch for the first time. And it's appalling. And once again, not their fault at all, but it was appalling the amount of times that I would sit there and I'd be maybe 30 to 50, sometimes to 60% through their pitch. And I was still sitting there trying to figure out where everything fit together in the big picture. And that's very dangerous, because if I'm sitting there trying to figure out what the hell you're talking about for a big period of time, basically your influence and your persuasion has decreased markedly, yeah? You have to be able to basically connect the dots for me as the listener as quickly as possible. And that's called setting the frame. That's called setting the context. So putting a box around the information and going, this is what this means, this is why this is important, and this is how this relates to you and the big idea, the big promise that I'm talking about. Does that make sense? And that's what a lot of these people fail to do. And whenever I teach people to pitch or to teach or to create training modules or anything like that, it's getting that idea right. If you can set the frame, if you can stop me thinking because you set the stage from the start, boom, now I can become captivated by all the rest of the information that you're giving me without having to sit here going, where does that fit? Why is that important? Why am I listening? All right. So I hope that makes sense. Do you get that? So what I'm going to quickly do right now is show you how to do this, how it works in real life, and then what you can start to do to improve your communication style. So let me quickly go down to my other little device here. I'm going to draw for you real quick a real example. So we've got, or before COVID-19, we had a live event that we run where we would help people to fine-tune their minds, get their emotions on point, and improve their performance, yeah? And we did that over 7 hours. Now, the overarching promise, the overarching frame was that I'm going to help you become unstoppable, right? That was the promise, and that was the rule by which people judge my performance for the day. Now, to do that, there were multiple elements. Number 1 was mindset, number 2 was emotions, and number 3 was performance. Now, these chunks, if I just came in and started to talk about these chunks without giving them a frame, a box to live in, what would happen is that my audience would glaze over, right? It would take them a while to catch up. So instead of leaving it up to my audience or my students or the people I'm trying to influence to connect the dots, you do it for them. So for example, let's say I'm talking about mindset. Instead of diving straight into it going, okay, cool, so here's this statistic, here's this study, here's this content, you start it like this. You have to put the message in the box, right? So my message was mindset. I go, all right, so the first thing I want to talk about is getting your mindset right. Now, in respect to you becoming unstoppable, in respect to you becoming the best you can be in life. So once again, relating the idea back to the overall promise, yeah, and relating it to them, I go, if you don't get your mindset right, if you can't control your thoughts, if you can't control your habits, what's going to happen is that you're always going to talk yourself out of doing things. You're always going to, get in negative spins, anxious thoughts, depressive thoughts. So you have to get this right. So what I want to do is I want to show you how to get your mindset absolutely bulletproof. That way, relating it back to the big idea, right, up there, that way you can become absolutely unstoppable. Boom. What I've done is I've taken this idea right here, this content chunk, and I've given that message meaning by relating it back to the overall big promise. So that's the how, by the way, guys. That's how you set the context. That's how you set the frame, is you take what you're communicating and you relate that either back to A, the big picture, or B, the person that you're trying to communicate with. All right, so I'm just going to go back to my other camera right here. So let me give you another example, right? So let's say that you're a course creator, you're a coach, right? And you take someone from a nightmare to some desired result, yeah? Now let's assume that for them to go from the nightmare to their desired result, there's certain steps, yeah? If you're going to teach those steps, if you're going to do it effectively without them getting lost in the trees, for lack of a better way of describing it, each module, each step in your signature system, yeah, you want to relate that back to the big idea. So let's say, for example, you help a business go from no money to more money, more money, baby. All right. And let's say one of those components is how to get leads. That's one of the steps, right? Because obviously, without leads, you've got no sales. Without sales, you've got no money. You've got no money, you've got no business. So let's say that's one of the steps, yeah? Each of the steps, whenever you start teaching that training module or whenever you go in to coach the person on that specific thing, you have to relate that back to the overall outcome that you're trying to help them achieve, right? So once again, if you're trying to help them achieve lots of money, let's say have a 6-figure business, right? You got to go, okay, cool. So today what I want to teach you is how to get leads for your business. Now, the reason why this matters is because most business owners, right, often they've got a good sales process, often they've got a good product, but the thing that they lack, and the reason why, relate back to the outcome, they don't have the money that they like, is because they're not getting enough leads. So often, they don't have enough leads. It's such a common problem that businesses have. So what we need to do is make sure that you've got a lead machine, something that brings you leads day in and day out. That way you're having the conversations that lead to sales. You've got the money coming in. And obviously what that does, it takes you from nightmare, having no money in your business, to desired result, having as much money as you want. Let's say it's 6 or 7 figures. Does that make sense? I just want to give you one more example of how you can take the idea of setting the frame and apply that to a real thing, because I've heard trainings where people fail to do it, and I'm literally sitting there going, okay, so how does this relate to the big idea? So anyway, I hope that makes sense. I want to quickly wrap this up. It's gone longer than I wanted it to. I want to just be a short little video. So let me just quickly finish by saying, start to adjust your communication style, yeah? So whenever you're trying to communicate, influence, teach, persuade someone, what I want you to do, right, is think, okay, so how can I relate this idea back to my audience's highest intention, the highest outcome that they want to achieve? If you do that, if you can set that box, you can set the frame, what's going to happen is you're going to immediately become much more persuasive, much more influential, and if you're teaching people, you're going to help them learn faster. Anyway, take care. I'll chat to you soon. Bye-bye.